Hi, would you like to learn about the war in Libya? The USA and her allies, including Canada, Britain, France and Italy, have been bombing Libya for the last 6 months. Libya is a country on the north coast of Africa in the Sahara Desert, and they have been bombing its water supplies, as well as its hospitals, universities, factories and bakeries. They are trying to help rebels to take over the country and overthrow Libya's leader, Colonel Gaddafi. These rebels have been trained since the 80s by the CIA. Back then, Gaddafi took over all the rich nations' corporations operating in Libya and made them be owned by the Libyan people, so that oil profits went straight into every Libyan's bank account. He made petrol cost 14 cents a litre and built hundreds of thousands of poor people free homes. Part 2. Economics. All the poor countries in the world are poor because their economies are owned by rich countries. New Zealand's economy is 85% owned by rich nations. Because the rich nations own the factories and other means of production, they are highly mechanized and produce more products than the workers can afford to buy. Because workers are only paid enough to maintain themselves and their families and receive their training. This caused the corporations to reduce production, increasing unemployment to the point that New Zealand didn't produce enough to maintain itself, and had to borrow from the rich countries, causing debt. Our debt increased, until by the 70s we couldn't afford to pay interest on our debt, so our government had to sell the industries it owned to the rich nations, including telecom and the railways. Now our total debt exceeds our annual income by 30%, and we have to borrow $300 million a week from the World Bank so we can afford to pay the World Bank $500 million a week in debt repayments. This caused our growth rate to be negative 1.5% this year as we decayed economically under our debt. The entire world went into debt to the rich countries, and even the rich countries went into debt to the richest country, America. All the world then became unable to buy from America and had to buy from China. This made America reduce production, causing America to have to buy from China and go into debt to them. Now America's debt owed to China, if stacked as $20 bills, would reach 3/4 of the way to the moon. Part 3. Revolution. By 2008, the world growth rate was 250% fake, meaning only 30% was real, and America's and Europe's biggest banks and corporations went bankrupt, starting the worldwide recession. The governments reduced spending money on the needy and used the taxpayers' money to bail out the corporations. This caused protests in 37 European countries all at the same time in 2008, and began to cause revolutions to overthrow the governments in Africa and the Middle East at the start of this year. When this started, the rich nations began invading Libya to prevent the poor countries uniting with Libya and doing what they did, taking over the corporations for the people. This would also allow the poor countries to refuse to pay back their debt owed to the rich countries. If the whole world united and abolished money and debt, then all poor people in the world would be 500 times richer, because 50% of the world's population own only 1% of the world's wealth. Last century, most of the world was owned by a few European countries, which forced their colonies' economies to be owned by them, causing debt and revolution against colonialism. Some revolutions failed, and America replaced the colonial governments with puppet dictatorships. Some succeeded, and took over the economy and gave it to the people, and joined a worldwide union of liberated states called the Socialist Bloc. Gaddafi was one of the few leaders who sent his army across his own borders to promote revolution to try and destroy colonialism. The Socialist Bloc collapsed because China left it and became an ally of America and started training mercenary armies to wage civil wars in all the African nations of the Socialist Bloc, killing millions of people. Only a few former members of the Socialist Bloc kept the economy in the hands of the people. One of these was Libya. Thus, Libya remains one of the brightest beacons of the world revolution. When America declares war on Libya, many African nations will unite to defend it, as they shed blood fighting alongside Libya against colonialism and dictatorships. This will cause a chain reaction, causing all presently and former revolutionary states in the world to unite, allowing the world to unite in 7 days. If these countries don't unite in time, many countries will be invaded, including Russia and China, which were once members of the Socialist Bloc and who shared revolutionary history with Africa. Thus, the invasion of Libya is the first act of World War III by the rich countries against the poor countries to stop a world revolution of the poor against the rich. Most rich nations are allies of America's NATO military alliance. Even though New Zealand is poor, we are also part of this alliance. Our Prime Minister John Key is giving millions of dollars to fund the rebels in Libya, so thus our government is just as evil as America's is. Thus this theory gives us the justification to overthrow our government and give power to the people. Part 4. Rugby World Cup. The rebels in Libya cannot win because all the tribes of Libya support Gaddafi. The rebels are being held up by a few thousand British ground troops. America needs to declare war on Libya so they can invade with thousands of ground troops and tanks to overthrow Gaddafi. America will need to blow up their own civilians to justify declaring war on Libya. Since Gaddafi will soon beat the rebels, they will need to do this within the next month. They must also begin World War III before the recession gets worse and the world revolution intensifies. Since 13 of America's allies are attending the Rugby World Cup being held in New Zealand, they will blow up the Rugby World Cup finals on the 23rd of October, killing 60,000 innocents. All of New Zealand needs to be warned urgently since we only have 4 weeks left. Please download this video, upload it onto your own YouTube account, and spread this message as fast as possible. Thank you.
So how did that? Can you describe the final week?
Broken windows and rusty eyes.
Can you tell us what happened?
We finally got sick of it all.